Our home page and our stores page is starting to get really, really long. I think we have something about 15, 16 different stores on the home page. And if we were to continually add that up to 1,000, 2,000 stores, then that would take way too long to actually load the page because each of these stores has an image associated with it. So we need to introduce pagination, which will allow us to skip from store page to page to page to page. Great. So what we essentially need to do is to go into our store controller and we need to modify our get stores function to not just find all of them, but to find a specific number of stores, and we need to skip it. So, like, let's say we're showing 3 or 4 per page. If I'm showing 4 per page, page 1 is 1 through 4. Then on page 2, I need to skip 4 and start at 5, 6, 7, 8. You get the point, right? So, we first want to create a new route because the way that the URLs are going to work, we are going to go /stores /page /2 /3 /4. Those are going to be the pages that we're on. So let's open up our index.js and let's look for our, here we go. We got our now we're going stores. Let's just duplicate and modify it for how we want it. So let's go back to our get stores function here. And I'm going to put this find on its own line and take off the semicolon because there's a lot that we're going to be going through here. So first thing that we need is we need a variable for what page we are on. So we'll say const page is equal to, and ideally we get that from the URL request.params.page. But if we're on the home page, like we are clicking on stores right here, or we are on the home page, there is no store number, there is no page number. And in that case, we just show them 1. So we say or 1. Then we need a limit. How many do you want to show per page? So we'll say const limit. And let's set it to 4 per page. Now we need to make our skip. So we're going to make a const skip equals. And what skip is going to be is if we're on page 2, we want to skip 4 because we are showing 5, 6, 7, 8. If we're on page 1, our skip is going to be 0. So in order for us to do that, we take the page, which is we're on page 1, and we multiply that by the limit, that is 4, and that's going to give us page times limit. That's going to give us 4 minus the actual limit. And let's just think about that a second. So page 1, let's do some math here. We're on page 1. We're going to multiply that by 4, and then we're going to subtract 4, so that will give us a skip of 0. And then if we're on page 2 times 4, that's going to give us 8 minus 4. We want to skip 4. So that's in pretty good shape so far. Then we can go down to our find here, and we're going to implement a skip, which is our skip variable. And we are going to limit it to the number that we have. So let's try it out. We go to our stores, or go to page 2, and we're seeing the burnt tongue, bar Zaki, mulberry coffee, olive oil. Page 1, we see chard. Page 3, we see that. And if we just go to the home page, we see chard R4. So we know our pagination is actually working. Now we need to make some sort of interface to actually handle showing the next and the previous values. So we're going to make ourselves another mixin called pagination. So go to views, mixin. We'll make a mixin pagination. It's going to take in the current page, the number of pages, and the count. 2 of these things which we do not have just yet. Then we'll have a pagination div. We'll have a pagination __ previous, and we'll say if the page is greater than 1. So if we're not on page 1, because otherwise we need to be able to, we wouldn't want to say previous on page 1. Then we do an a ref equals stores /page / and we want to take the current page and remove it, bring it down by 1, and we'll say previous. Then in between, we're going to have some text. So pagination text. We'll put a paragraph tag and we'll say page of, how many pages are there? We're going to have to figure that out in a second. We'll give it a dash out of how many total results, count total results. And then that should be indented, and we'll have a pagination next. And we'll say if the page is less than the number of pages. So if we're not on the last one, then we give ourselves a ref to the next one. And the reason why we need to do that, because it will think that this page is an actual string, and a string plus a number will give you 11. String of 1 plus 1 will give you 11. And we'll say next. Okay, so there's a couple things we need here. We need to be able to figure, we know what page we're on. We do not know how many pages there are in total, and we do not know how many values there are in total. So we have to go back to our store controller here and get a couple more of those actual values. So our first question is, if we're now limiting the number that we find, how do we possibly know how many items are actually in the database? Well, what we can do is, rather than query the entire database for every single store, we can actually use something in MongoDB called count. And that will not return us all the documents. It'll just tell us how many there are. And that's going to be really, really nice and quick. So rather than awaiting our store data, we're going to be doing two queries, and we're going to use promise.all to wait on both of them. We've done this already once before, but let's do it once more. So we'll go in here, const stores equals await. We will rename this to stores promise, and we will take the await off. Then we'll go down here and we'll say const count promise is equal to store, capital S store dot count. And what that will do is it'll return a promise of when it comes back from counting them all, it'll give us the actual data. Then we're not awaiting either of these. We can await both of them at the same time. So stores count is equal to await, and we say promise.all. Remember, we can pass promise.all an array of promises, stores promise, and count promise. And then that way we will fire off both of these queries at the same time, but wait for both of them to come back, because likely this one will take a little bit longer than this one. So we have our stores, we have our count. Now what we can do is, let's just actually double check that we have our stores coming back. Maybe you can put the count in here in the title, just to see if we have how many we have. There we go, 16. So we do have that count variable coming back, no problem. Now we can figure out how many pages there will be. So const pages is equal to, and we need to take the upper limit of the number of stores divided by how many are on per page. So if we have the count, 16 stores, and we have 4 per page, that is going to give us, which is our limit. So 16 divided by 4, that's going to give us a clean 4 pages. But what if we had 17 stores? What would we get? We would get like 4 and a bit pages. So we say math.ceil, the ceiling, not like the actual animal, and math.ceil will give us the upper bound. So if we have 17, we're going to need 5 pages, because that last one is going to be on the last page that we have there. So that's what we have here so far. We can now take these variables, the count variable and the pages variable, as well as the page variable, and we can pass that all along to our actual template. So we have stores, we have page, we have pages, and we have our count. Now let's go back to our pagination here. And we've already used these values in here. Oh, look at these two. These two need to have a hash beside them. We need to now bring that into our stores.pug file. So we'll include the mixin, and then we'll use it down below our stores. And we'll pass it. What is it expecting? Page, pages, and count. Page, pages, and count. So that was a lot. Let's see if it works. So we've got page 1 of 4, 16 total results, and it gives us a next. If I click on that, not found. Oh, it's because our links page, not pages. Let's give it a refresh now. Page 1 of 4, total results. There we go, 2 of 4, 3 of 4. Get to the last one. We don't have it because why? Because we have these if statements that make sure if we should show them or not. Same thing if we're on our first page, we do not see a previous showing up because we don't need it. One thing is we do want to guard against possible data changing. So maybe somebody bookmarks that they're on page 20, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work. It says page 20 of 4, 16 total results, and we don't get anything. So what we want to do in that case is go back to our store controller here. And right before we render out, we'll say if there is no stores.length, If there are no stores that have come back and there is a skip value, then we want to redirect them to the last page of pagination. So we'll say request.flash. We'll use info here because it's not really success. We'll say, hey, you asked for page, and we'll tell them what page they asked for, but that doesn't exist. So I put you on page, and then we'll tell them pages. That's the last one. So if they ask for 20 and we only have 4, we're going to say, hey, you asked for 20, but I only put you on page 4 because that's as far as we can possibly go. And then we'll redirect them to that actual page. And then finally, make sure you return from this because we're done here. We're not actually going to render. We're just going to redirect them to this page, which this get stars will run again. So give that a save. Now, when you refresh a page that shouldn't exist, it says, hey, you asked for page 20, but that doesn't exist. So I put you on page 4, and then it redirected us to page 4, which is the absolute last version that we have. Let's try it. One more. Let's log in and try to do it. Now, we deleted all of our login data, so you have to go to readme.md to find some of the actual logins that do exist. So let me log in as Debbie Downer. I'm going to add a new value. I'm going to great store. Love this place. Cool. So I added this new one, great store. But if I go back to our store page, you'll see that we now have 5 pages with 17 total results. I don't see it here. If we go through and look for it, here it is. It's because we're not actually sorting our stores in any meaningful way. So we can actually do that real quick. If we go back to our limit, take off the semicolon, and we could sort them by their property called created. Why? Because there's a field on each of our stores called created, and we'll make that descending. So now when I refresh my page 1, great store is first. Why? Because that's the latest store that I have created, whereas the last page is going to have the oldest stores on it. Awesome. Let's deploy this sucker.